Hello, Bill.
Good morning, Matt.
Welcome to the DMZ, everybody. We are taping this the morning of the inauguration. And so I am in, I've been in Washington, D.C. all week for CNN. And this morning, and I was there last night, I was at the Capitol, at the, what we call the game day studio. Which is on a rooftop overlooking the Capitol Dome. I was there last night until about 9 o'clock, I think. And I've been there all week, but right now I'm actually at my house in Alexandria, Virginia. I'm going to be watching.
You're
watching
not
on
going
TV.
to the mall. You're not going. Are you going to balls tonight? What are you doing?
No, it's a funny. This has been a very interesting week for me. And in many ways, a difficult week. I'm supposed to be, I'm going to be on CNN tonight, and I was told that I needed a tuxedo. And I'm always reminded of the Jack Donaghy line where in 30 Rock, where Liz Lemon's like, "Why are you wearing she sees him at night, and it's like, "Why are you wearing a tuxedo?" And he says, "It's after 5 o'clock. What am I, a farmer?" But I actually don't own a tuxedo. I'm a working class guy, Bill, just like you. And so I went and rented a tuxedo because I was going to have to go. I was going to have to be on tonight, and I don't know where, but I was told I had to have one. It was going to be someplace, I guess, one of the balls. So I rented the tuxedo. I have a tuxedo, which now I will not be. Now it's been moved to a different location. So I have I'm not going to wear it just to wear it, but I might put it on just to take a picture of me because there's no I haven't worn a tuxedo since 1992. So anyway, that's kind of been the way things, the challenges that I've faced. But I think maybe it's one of those. It's a thing where you should you need to own a tuxedo to be an elite here in DC.
In Trump's DC, you think it's a black tie affair?
Well, I won't say who, but I was telling I was lamenting my sartorial conundrum to one of my colleagues who told me that he owns 3 tuxedos. So I feel like I'm like a rube who's this is I connect, I think, with the average guy here. So who knows? The good thing is do they not do what are those boutonnieres? What are those things called that go around the waist?
Cummerbund?
I don't even know. Apparently,
did you go to a prom? Where did you grow up?
I think that's the last time I wore one, maybe. But luckily, my tux now doesn't have one of those cummerbunds or whatever I don't even know what they're called, but that's the argument against buying, is that if you only wear them every once in every couple decades, if you buy, they're going to go out of style. So, I mean, I was going for the Dumb and Dumber Jim Carrey look, but my wife cautioned against that. So, anyway, you're not going to have to worry.
You should wear a seersucker. That should be your move in Trump's DC.
Well, that's more of a. I don't know. That would be more like of a Haley Barbour becomes president or something. But who knows? Long story short, I will try to watch it on TV, and I will be schlepping.
So you're not hitting the scene. You're not going to go to the. You'll be on TV, but you're not going to go party the night away.
No. I should be on. I'm actually going to be on. I mean, who knows? These things fluctuate, but as of now, I'm going to be on and off, but on from 7 p.m. tonight till 1 a.m. in the morning.
Wow. So
my even if I were going to invite the balls, I don't know when I would go. But for the day, I'm trying to stay out of Gotham or out of DC and just kind of watch it on TV. It's like a football game, right? It's just better.
You're in Virginia.
Yeah,
you're in Virginia. What I'm seeing on Twitter is that DC feels very empty.
Well, I mean, anecdotally, that was my experience. That's been my experience. It's not like at the conventions where if you were at an outside set, you would hear just like the people, craziness, applause, chanting, protesting. It feels a little empty. I think some of it is just people who live here know better than to go to D.C. Just like that old line from Yogi Berra: "Nobody goes there anymore. It's too crowded." I think like, okay, I'll give you an example. Yesterday, I had to go into D.C. at noon. I had to be there at noon, and so I left my house. And now I live like 7 miles away, but I left at like 10:15. Because I thought, well, there could be all the security problems and there could be traffic. I made it to the meeting in 12 minutes. Like I made it faster than I would ever make it on a normal work day. And so, who knows? There's always the chance for some sort of traffic Mageddon or whatever they want to call it, But it seems, I think also compared to the Obama presidency and the inauguration, I mean, look, that was an historic thing, obviously first African-American president, but also the kinds of people, I think so you had two things going. Like, number one, the people who live in D.C. and Maryland and Northern Virginia are the kinds of people who would go to an Obama inauguration. Mm-hmm. The Trump voter in Michigan probably isn't going to come. And I also think probably with Obama, you had African-American churches like busing people to this historic event. I don't think that's happening with the Trump. The Trump voter doesn't want to come to Washington D.C. Like in large numbers.
So, is your sense that? I mean, obviously, there's going to be a lot of people saying the inauguration was poorly attended. There were more people for the protest the next day probably than the inauguration itself. Trump's poll numbers are the worst for any incoming president in history, that he's already starting off on the worst possible foot. But you have this one discordant opinion from Nate Cohn at the Times who said, his approval is really terrible. There's no getting around that. But you see better numbers when people are asked, are you optimistic for the future? How will you think Trump will do on the economy? I mean, they're not gangbuster numbers, but they are better than the approval numbers.
Right.
So, how weak do you think Trump is going in because of all this?
So first of all, I think that it's not necessarily a bad thing. Well, okay, so I guess number one is, how much do we trust the polls? And you know what I mean? Like, based on what we just went through, like, how much do we trust the polls? Mm-hmm. Number two, I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing to be starting off with low numbers. You got nowhere to go but up. Mm-hmm. And it's better, and politics is all about under-promise and overachieve. And President Obama came in with all this hope and change and optimism. That was sort of a letdown over time.
Isn't Trump a classic overseller?
Well, he probably is. He's going to talk about the huge crowds. And look, there are, I think there probably will be, a couple of 100,000 people. Nothing to sneeze at. But
his policy agenda too. It's all make America great. Jobs are going to be coming back. Obamacare replacement is going to be fantastic. He's not exactly setting a low bar for himself. And I grant that probably throughout the land, people's expectations are much lower.
Yeah.
But he doesn't set a low bar for himself.
No, I agree. But I think that look, I think that right now his approval numbers are low because number one, the country's polarized. And if Hillary Clinton had won, her approval rating probably wouldn't be great either. So some of this doesn't have to do with Trump. It has to do with the country and our state of politics. Some of it, I think, does have to do with Trump, but not anything he's enacted because he hasn't enacted anything. I think it has to do with his tweeting and his comments that can be controversial. But to your point, though, I do think that he could turn the country around. Or that it could just turn around on its own. The economy is resilient. Things might start to get better. And things we have seen him have, like the carrier intervention is very popular. So I wouldn't be surprised if things do go well and these numbers do go up, and then it becomes a good story that they've risen so much since he was inaugurated.
Well, I totally agree. I mean, he presumably can only go up, I guess.
Yeah. I look at this as like the glass is half full. You know, this is not necessarily a bad thing if you're into politics, and partly because because Harry Reid killed the filibuster, he doesn't really need a lot of popularity right now to get his to get his nominees passed. He will need it for his agenda. But we've already got some senators like Manchin from West Virginia who seem to be, look, the West Virginia is Trump country. So if his popularity goes up a little bit, you can get some Democrats on board and get some things done. This could turn out pretty good.
Well, that's sort of the big question. I mean, poll numbers in theory are only a problem in the governing phase insofar as they encourage senators or congresspeople to be bulky, to not feel they have to salute and fall in line because, hey, this guy's not all that popular. If I want, Rand Paul, right out of the gate, is saying, I'm not going to vote for Obamacare repeal and delay. I'll only do an immediate replacement. I'm not going to vote for a budget that doesn't balance in a short time frame when the current budget resolution doesn't balance at all. And if, it's a big if, Democrats were unified, and there are, I think, about 8 Democratic senators from Trump states, so that is a question.
Yeah.
But if you only have to lose 3 Republicans to not get things passed with unified Democratic opposition.
Right. So Tillerson, the Tillerson nomination would be the one that could be in jeopardy, I think, based on that, because you have John McCain and Marco Rubio and Lindsey Graham suggesting that they're not there yet on him. So
and Tillerson's a case. I mean, if I was a Democrat, I would. There's a bit of spreading their fire across several nominees because it seems like a target-rich environment. But only Tillerson, maybe Puzder, who's I don't think his hearing's been scheduled yet, and there's some domestic violence allegations there that might be tough for him. But Tillerson's the one nominee where the criticism of him is not strictly from the left. There are people on the right who are upset with him over his closeness with Putin, and so you could focus on that issue. So you wouldn't, if you beat Puzder because he's accused of domestic abuse, you might beat him, but the next labor nominee will still, not support minimum wage. You'll still be conservative on labor law.
But if you're Democrats, though, if you're Democrats, though, I think you could make an argument that, look, if you focus all of your attention on Tillerson and you are successful and you can kill that nomination, Donald Trump's going to nominate another Secretary of State that you're not going to like, and they're going to get through. But if you actually just have a strategy that isn't really geared toward blocking any nominee, but is instead geared toward making them all look corrupt and yucky and muddying the waters, and that actually might be a better long-term strategy, is just to dirty up all the Republicans, knowing you can't knock any of them out, but just make them all look bad and corrupt and evil.
Well, I think that's what they're trying to do, and I think the other practical benefit of that is the longer they can drag out the process and chew up Senate floor time, then you're running out of time to do all the other things that they want to do.
It's delay. It's a prevent defense sort of thing. A prevent defense is when you're winning and you try to run out the clock. But this is a run out the clock, strategy. I'm curious. I'm not a inside the weeds policy guy, but the way Republicans did the Betsy DeVos hearing seemed to be great. They Lamar Alexander, who chairs that committee, only allowed one round of questioning. Each senator got 5 minutes, and there was just one round. And that was based on some precedent that's how education secretaries' hearings confirmation hearings had been done in the past. But I don't know why Republicans couldn't do that in other cases. Apparently the precedent, but that was one where, look, DeVos could have been very controversial. They held this hearing at 5 o'clock at night for, I don't think Republicans did that intentionally, but it kind of worked out to their favor. And the fact that there was only the one round of hearing, one round of questioning, which of course your guy Al Franken and your gal Elizabeth Warren strenuously objected to. But that was pretty. That's the way to do it, I think, if you're a Republican.
Well, Franken really is the breakout star of this confirmation process. He's gone from one hearing to the next.
Much better than Cory Booker, and Cory Booker obviously attempted to use this as his sort of to elevate himself in the Sessions, and I think that the Sessions hearing, I think that fell flat. I think you're exactly right, Bill. I think that Al Franken is the guy who's coming out of this so far looking strong.
Booker. I don't know if you I know you don't follow the left as closely, but in the budget resolution process, they have what they call a vote-o-rama, where they have all these amendments to the budget resolution, and they're all symbolic and non-binding, but they tend to be used as message vehicles. You say Republicans didn't vote to keep protection for pre-existing conditions, and you run an ad in the 2018 campaign on that. So Bernie Sanders had an amendment about supporting importation of Canadian prescription drugs, which 13 Democrats opposed, including Booker, and Booker has just been hammered on the left for that vote, saying he's in the pocket of Big Pharma. And there's definitely a stray on the left that has always mistrusted Booker. I think Booker is seen most as kind of the rising star, very charismatic, very social media savvy. But the left remembers when Cory Booker finger-wagged at Obama for going after Mitt Romney and Bain Capital. They think he's too close to Wall Street, and this vote confirmed all their suspicions. And Booker actually went out, I think he wrote a post at Jezebel.com defending himself. But I think that's been a sour note for him, while Franken, everyone's just loving Franken, tearing apart these nominees. It's not going to stop them from being confirmed, of course, but it's definitely raising his profile. And as you know, I said he should have been on the ticket with Clinton. And in a Trump universe, that's not as ridiculous as it may have sounded before. And I wouldn't be surprised if people start talking up for a presidential run.
Yeah, and I mean, who knows? 4 years is a long time. Obviously, you don't wait 4 years to start running, but 2 years is a long time, and Franken's star may rise and fall. Who knows? But he has been the kind of breakout guy here. And look, you could argue that if we have shifted into a paradigm of where we're going to elect celebrities, then he sort of bridges that gap pretty amazingly. He's a guy who was famous before he got into politics. I personally don't look. This could be a Rorschach test. I don't find. I've never actually found him funny, even though he comes from the era. I think everybody is assigned everybody has an era of Saturday Night Live, and it's probably like however old you are when you turn like 15, when you're old enough to kind of stay up late and do whatever you want, but you're not old enough to go to bars or like drive, so you're at home at 11:30 on a Saturday Night Live, watching TV. So he comes from my era. I've never actually liked him, and I don't find him that charming or funny. It just doesn't do it for me. But
well, I don't think he's charming. I don't think that's the right. And I wouldn't. My piece for him was the argument that he'd be a great second banana, not a lead role.
Yeah.
And I don't think his comment, I think, is hit or miss. It's very deadpan.
But there are people like Charles Grodin comes to mind, or even David Letterman, who are like or hell, Andy Rooney, the late Andy Rooney. I mean, there are people who are like curmudgeonly, like pains in the ass that are also secretly charming. Like Tony Kornheiser. Like, I'm a huge Tony Kornheiser fan, right? I mean, like, or Larry David. I don't but for me, like, he just comes off as a mean person. I don't see I don't get the other side.
There's definitely a conservative filter when it comes to Franken that has been in place for a long time. But Trump is a Rorschach as well. I mean, there's plenty of people on the left that look at Trump aghast and say, "How does anybody find this guy charming? How does anybody find this guy?"
It's not just the left, Bill.
But
he does have his. He does. I will say, Trump does have his. there is a side of him there is a side of Trump that is charming that I do find appealing from time to time. There's the other side that's a big, like the dial test, like the Frank Luntz dial test. Like I would be all over the map with Trump at this point.
Mm-hmm. But I think there's a parallel between Franken and Warren in that their political stock has risen on the left when they are being interrogators, and that arguably is not the skill set that you want in a presidential nominee. You want optimistic and uplifting and soaring aspirational rhetoric and that sort of thing. I mean, I think Warren has more of that capacity than maybe Franken does, but Franken hasn't really sought to play on that playing field yet.
It's funny, Rubio could do both. That's interesting. Mm-hmm. I never thought of that, but he was very good in the Tillerson hearing as the interrogator, and he also can do. Maybe somebody ought to think about this Rubio guy as a candidate someday. I'm just spitballing, just throwing that out.
This goes back to the poll number question. I think there's a very real chance that Trump gets primaried in 2020 if he's still rattling around 40, and he's not polling well in trial heats. That's an opening for a Rubio or an Evan McMullin or a Jeff Flake.
What about Rand Paul, the aforementioned Rand Paul?
Or Rand Paul. The people, you see a lot of Republicans, I think, trying to fall in line right now, but I think there's a lot of upside for the Republican that stands, a little bit askew of what's going on. Because, there's no way, at minimum, this is a smooth 4 years.
Yeah. Even possible. And even if your goal isn't to be president, you could carve out a niche as like the true believer conservative who, 7 years from now, when everybody everybody on the, now again, this may not play out this way, but if you believe that the world is linear and, you could argue that 7 years from now, the true blue conservatives will look at the big government stuff that Trump has done. And if you had stood athwart Trumpism, yelling "stop," talking about small government and the Constitution, and sort of that more libertarian wing of the Republican Party, that you would then be positioned. Maybe you don't ever run for president, but you've got a brand, you've got an audience. It's a marketing decision, really. You don't need 50% necessarily. You get 20% of the people who love you, and you've got a pretty good little business going there.
So now people on the show might not know, but you have shifted offices. You have left the Daily Caller, your longtime home, and now you're at the Daily Beast, as well as still continuing to work on CNN. So I like to ask you to take the temperature of conservative Washington, knowing that you're in the Daily Caller offices talking to conservatives all day long. Now you're not there anymore. So are you still a reliable weather vane for me to know because I want to know how conservative Washington is feeling about Trump today. Are they feeling jazzed that they're going to get their Supreme Court nominee and they're going to slash the budget and all sorts of deregulations going to happen, or are they clutching their stomachs thinking this is all going to be a house of cards that collapses?
No, I think it's overall. Overall, I think there is cautious optimism. I mean, for a whole bunch of reasons, including psychological reasons. It's just nothing we can do to stop him, and so look at the bright side. And there is a lot of good stuff that could come out of this. Supreme Court appointments. Trump is going to get like 100 federal judge appointments. These are lifetime appointments that cannot be filibustered. 2 federal judgeships, which could dramatically change things. There's all sorts of regulatory things that President Obama was doing, which were constitutionally dubious, but he was using executive orders and EPA administrators to just sort of change rules and regulations and push things. And so there's a lot of excitement. Even people who were concerned about Donald Trump are looking for a reason for optimism. I also just think, look, I do want to say this as we're taping this on Inauguration Day, without getting too sappy. there is something very special about this country and about this tradition. And I was just watching on TV before we taped this, President Obama going to that, I think it's an Episcopal church, that sort of beautiful yellow church there on, is it on I Street?
Right, it's across the street from the White House.
Right near Pennsylvania Avenue, right near the White House. And that's a tradition that, I think maybe since FDR, maybe earlier, that presidents on Inauguration Day go there. Yesterday, I was actually on CNN with Wolf Blitzer during the wreath-laying ceremony at Arlington National Cemetery. So for it's been such a crazy year, but I take solace and comfort in these traditions. And whether it's the kind of the pomp and circumstance of the balls, or whether it is the more somber moments, or whether it's just the dulcet, the beautiful Lee Greenwood, God bless the USA. Mm-hmm. There's something special about this, and whether the crowds are there or not, it's great that we live in the country with the peaceful transfer of power. I'll get off my soapbox now.
Well, I wouldn't know, because as you know, I wrote for the New Republic last week. Don't watch Trump's inauguration.
Are you actually living by this, Bill?
I'm living by it.
Okay.
I mean, look, I am an opinion journalist. There might be certain things that I have to watch at some point. But my general attitude for Trump is I will read you. I will read your words. I will stay informed. But I'm not going to be a monkey in your circus. I know you want my ratings points. You want my clicks. You want
to see I guess I am the monkey in the circus.
Well, he wants to. He had the most watch this and the most watch that, and he wants to be. He wants to engage the public in a visual way. He doesn't want the focus to be on the nitty gritty of policies. Even the tweets. The tweets can be very distracting at times, but as I wrote in the piece, a tweet is still a written word, and the written word at some point has to talk about issues. You can't get away from that. So there's certain tweets are actually about substantive things like infrastructure or Obamacare or nuclear proliferation, and those subject matters you do want to engage him on and talk about what he's actually proposing or lack thereof. So I don't want to be in a. You have this counsel from a Italian-born professor saying, look, Berlusconi ran circles around the liberal opposition because they were attacking his character and not talking about the issues. So if you're taking him in visually, you're more likely to make fun of his hair or make fun of his syntax or silly things like that and not talk about the bread and butter stuff. So that is my approach to getting through the next 4 years of darkness.
Yeah. Well, again, you asked me about conservatives and where they are. And I don't, always necessarily claim to be a barometer, but I am still torn between, I think that this could, I've always thought this was high risk, high reward, and it was a risk I didn't necessarily want to take, but I think there's a higher potential reward. I think Donald Trump could end up becoming a very good president, and certainly one that Republicans revere. He could be, he could be Reagan. He could be something else too, but there's a chance. And so this could, it'll be interesting. This is a very special day, and we may, I may look back at this day. It could go, again, it could go a couple different directions.
So I think you should tell us to your new boss at the Daily Beast. I think we need to have, if you remember, in the beginning of the Obama years, Politico had, I think it was Ben Smith, and he had a Politico blog. He created what he called the Brooksometer, which was a little compass type thing where he would rate how David Brooks was feeling about Barack Obama based on his columns. I think at the top of the line it was like liberal Reagan, at the bottom it was Carter or something like that. And so, depending on the column, he used that as his proxy gauge. How is Obama's outreach beyond the liberal base going? I think we need a Lewisometer, with next Reagan, Teddy Roosevelt, Warren Harding, Jimmy Carter. So we can gauge from your columns exactly where you were feeling at any given moment about Trump.
I would welcome that idea. I would encourage that, and I think that
So right now you're where? Right now you're at Reagan, you're at TR, you're at Carter, you're at Harding. Where are you?
Oh, well, first of all, I think that's for others need to read my writing and discern that. I don't know that we can judge ourselves.
Okay.
And since he hasn't actually done anything, it's premature. But I'm at the George H.W. Bush. I mean, I know the two men are nothing alike. But I'm feeling good. And by the way, obviously we keep that former president in our thoughts and prayers at this moment. But I don't know that we would go to the Reagan. Like, to me, Reagan is the next guy on Reagan should be on Mount Rushmore, and we could take down TR or somebody, but so that would be presumptuous to think that Trump should be up there. But I think I'm more optimistic than I am pessimistic right now. And part of it honestly has to do with the cabinet picks. Now there have been some that concern people, like the Stephen Bannon pick. He's not in the cabinet, but he's his senior advisor. But a lot of these picks, who we had no idea, but a lot of these are perfectly legitimate and serious and thoughtful and good, and so that has reassured me.
They're obviously all very conservative, but is there a part that's saying, Betsy DeVos, she does not seem to have a grasp of the policy specifics?
No, I'm actually excited about her. I wrote a piece for the Daily Beast. I think it's my second piece for the Daily Beast about her hearing. So basically, my take is that a lot of Trump's appointments are about actually doing things and doing big things. And if your goal was to make the Department of Education run smoothly as manage a bureaucracy, she's not the person I would pick. But if your goal was actually to change education, to introduce, it's not that she's anti-public education, but options, right? We live in a world now with the iPhone, where we have been trained for customization, for options, for choice, right? Whether that's vouchers or charter schools or magnet schools or public schools or religion, whatever it is, I do believe that we're sort of operating in an antiquated paradigm meant for the agricultural age in terms of our educational system. She's somebody who can tackle that visionary reform change. Now, what has to happen is, it's very important that they have a strong number two, someone who can make sure that, guess what? The billions of dollars in student loans, how does that get paid? How does that, someone needs to manage those logistical things. And that's the concern. I think that it could be a debacle.
A lot of those people haven't even been named yet. I'm sorry. They only have 23 people named for about 690 confirmable slots. So there's this real lag in having those number twos in place to actually execute things.
Well, I was saying with the whole Trump thing is high risk, high reward. I think this is a microcosm of a lot of the different cabinet positions, especially on the domestic side, where we have people that I think are visionary reform people who are picks about changing things, mostly in directions that I want to go. But the problem is that they don't have a lot of governmental experience. They're not necessarily going to be the best managers. And I think that opens you up to two possibilities. One is actually getting things done and changing things. Or the other is scandal and sloppiness and incompetence. And so, again, a lot of range there.
I'm going to have to leave it on that note because I have to jump. But always good to talk to you on this darkest of days.
Make America great again, my friend. God bless America. It's a special day. And I know you're joking about that darkest of days thing.
I am really not.
All right. Great talking to you. And thank you, everybody at the DMZ. And we'll see you all next week.
Next week.
Thanks.